Yeah, having a hard time sticking to the AIP diet and possibly considering quitting? Listen to this video first. I'm about to give you my top 10 tips for how to stick to the AIP diet because I know how hard it can be if you aren't prepared. AIP isn't as easy as grabbing a microwave meal out of the freezer case from the grocery store or driving through a fast food lane, and it probably never will be. However, you can make it a lot more difficult than it needs to be, and I speak from experience here. I want to help you prevent that and to succeed. So let's get to it. Tip number 1 is always have your why in mind. Why are you doing AIP? Do you have a list of symptoms that you're trying to get rid of? Little kids or grandkids that you want to have energy to play with? It's helpful to write your why down somewhere so you'll see it and be reminded of why you're making this change in your life and at least temporarily giving up some of the foods that you may love. I also like to have it in the format of, I want this so that. Some examples of this could be, if you're writing a list of symptoms, instead of just listing, say, heavy periods, say, I want to get rid of my ridiculously heavy periods so I can go out in public without worrying that I'm going to embarrass myself with a leak. You see the difference here? Another example could be, instead of writing just exhaustion, write, I want to have the energy so that I can keep up with my toddler. Or yet another example is, instead of just listing brain fog, right? I want to get rid of brain fog so that I can be an active participant in my meetings at work. So just listing the symptoms you want to stop is fine, but that part is so really powerful. It really helps cement the reasons why you're doing this and why you're sacrificing foods that you love into your brain, telling your brain that it's working for you and it's worth it for you. Tip number 2 is to don't let yourself get too hungry. Eat meals at regular intervals filled with good fats and protein, and always, and I mean always, be prepared with snacks wherever you go. Keep something non-perishable like Chomps bars or Wild Zora bars, a bag of dried fruit, or a bag of plantain chips in your purse, your car, and your office desk. Why do this? Well, when you get hungry, or if your blood sugar starts to drop, you lose willpower and resort to eating whatever is available. And most times that something is not AIP friendly. So by having AIP friendly snacks around that, you can at least know that you're prepared for an emergency. Tip number 3 is to meal plan. The quickest way to get off the AIP train is to not have a clue what your next meal is going to be. If you don't plan your meals ahead of time, you probably won't have the ingredients you need, the recipe ideas to make, and may not even have the time that you need to make the meals. Then when it's near dinner time, you'll be tired from a long day, and the idea of trying to figure out what to make is enough to exhaust you, let alone actually making it. So meal planning takes that out of the equation. You'll know on Tuesday night, I'll make this, and then have the ingredients ready and the time set aside to do so. You don't even need to plan the whole week ahead of time if that's not your thing. Just a day ahead is better than nothing. Tip number 4 is to always have 10 meal ideas at your fingertips. I recommend having at least 10 ideas for meals that you have tried and like or want to try. So why do this? Well, when you don't have the time, energy, or desire to search for meal ideas, it really helps to have a list that you can reference. Surfing the internet or searching through endless amount of cookbooks can be fun. I love doing it. But only when you have the time and energy to do it. When you're rushed, it's the last thing you need to be doing. So a list takes the thinking out of it and makes it easy to meal plan. You can keep the list on your phone, on a piece of paper, or even in a meal planning app if you have one that you like. I personally love and use Plan to Eat. Tip number 5, have at least one, if not more, convenience meals available at all times. Whether this is a dump and go freezer meal you have in the freezer, a meal you have made and frozen leftovers of, or a meal made from pantry staples. Have something on hand. Why do this? Well, when you're tired, in pain, or time has gotten away from you, you'll have some things you can just dump into a crock pot or reheat or mix together without much effort at all. Tip number 6, have fun meals and treats ready. Having fun meals and treats in mind to either make or buy can really help with your mindset about AIP being too restrictive. Have things that feel like a cheat but aren't. Some ideas could be like an eat gangster cookie. I always have some frozen in my freezer. Or eating a bowl of Love Bird cereal. Or maybe have a few recipes that you found on Pinterest that look really delicious, but maybe aren't necessarily something that you would make on a regular basis. For instance, maybe like some cinnamon buns for breakfast or some dessert recipe. Sometimes you don't even have to make the meals. Sometimes just having the recipe ideas on hand, knowing that you could make them, is enough to get you out of this is too restrictive and I can't eat anything mentality. One other thing I love to have on hand in my freezer are paleo on the go meals. They're usually pretty fun, things like chicken pot pie, Pop-Tarts, and breakfast empanadas, but they're also convenient. So they check the box for both this tip and the last tip as well. Tip number 7 is to embody someone who is healthy. Try doing this exercise. I want you to think of someone who you admire who is healthy. Someone that if you were healthy like them, you'd be pretty happy. Now, thinking about them, I want you to close your eyes and imagine them stepping into your life. What do they do? What do they say? What do they think? Now, are there things that you can take from this and apply to your own life? We so often get stuck in our own patterns and ways of thinking that it really helps to gain this fresh perspective. Tip number 8 goes along with tip number 7, and it's to live as if. This is a subtle mind shift, but it's what keeps most people from following through on like new habits or lifestyle changes or anything like that. Most people live from a model or way of being called have, do, be. Once I have, I'll do, then I'll be. An example of this would be, once I have the energy, I'll do the AIP diet, and then I'll be healthy. But do you see the issue in this? When will you get the energy unless you do the AIP diet? It's backwards. So instead, try the other way around. Be, do, have. I am healthy, therefore I do the things I need to do to be healthy, and therefore I have energy. Like I said, it's a mindset shift, but think about it. If you live from once I have energy, do you think you'll really make the diet and lifestyle changes that you need to do? Probably not. You'll put off doing the things you need to do until you have the energy. You've essentially defeated yourself from the start. But if you live from the opposite, from the identity of someone who is healthy, you'll say and think, I am healthy, therefore I do the things that I need to do. You'll live as if you are a healthy person. You then find it so much easier to do the things that someone who is healthy would do to get and stay healthy, like make diet and lifestyle changes. And then as a result, you'll have energy. Take on the identity of someone who is being who you want to be. You can take on the identity of the person that you thought of in the last tip if you want. And just to drive this home a little bit more, I want you to think of a non-smoker. A non-smoker has the identity of someone who doesn't smoke. They wouldn't suddenly pick up a cigarette and smoke it, right? Not usually, at least. It most likely wouldn't even cross their minds to pick up one. So in the same vein, a healthy person probably wouldn't pick up the gluten-filled donuts that are sitting right there on the desk just because they're right there. And the healthy person would also make getting a walk-in a priority. I admit, this takes practice, but it truly helps, and I'd say this is one of the biggest factors for how I've been able to shift from someone who constantly wanted the foods that cause my autoimmune flares to someone who loves and craves and eats the foods that make me feel my best. Tip number 9, the goal of AIP is not to do it perfectly. This is really important, so let me repeat that. The goal of AIP is not to do it perfectly. In fact, why don't I make a jingle so that you'll remember it? The goal of AIP is not to do it perfectly. The goal of doing AIP is to make yourself feel better, not to do it perfectly. There is no award for doing it 100% perfectly. No grades at the end. No police who are going to arrest you for eating chocolate or drinking coffee. Doing the AIP diet may be the easiest way to discern if you have tolerance issues with certain foods and to quickly heal a leaky gut. But does this mean that if you've had coffee one day that you need to start over? No. Or even worse, does it mean that you should start down the rabbit hole of this is too hard, I can't live without coffee, there's just no way I can do this, I'm gonna quit? If you do this, where is that gonna put you in a few months from now with your autoimmune disease? With your symptoms? With your quality of life? I'd much rather you treat every day as a new day. And if you somehow eat something you shouldn't have, or that's not compliant, just move on. Every meal, every snack, every bite of food you eat is an opportunity to heal and to feel better. And you'll heal even if you quote unquote cheat. It may take a little bit longer depending on what and how many times that you do, but please do not look at AIP as something that you have to do 100% perfectly for 30 days or else you fail and might as well quit. Please rather look at it as a tool in your toolbox for healing. A tool that you're choosing to wield to get your life back. Who cares if it's not done perfectly? A year from now, are you going to say, oh, I feel so much better because I did AIP 100% correctly? Or are you going to say, wow, I can't believe how good I feel? So don't get caught up in that perfection and relax and know that everything you're doing is helping you get to your goal. And tip number 10, try taking it slow. If you do constantly find yourself falling off the proverbial AIP bandwagon, maybe you're overwhelming yourself with like too much at once. Perhaps a cold turkey style of AIP is just too much for you right now, and you would do much better with a gradual implementation of the AIP diet. This is where you remove a group of foods a week as you gradually get used to doing the AIP diet. So for instance, in week 1, you would remove gluten, but then otherwise eat just normally, your normal diet. Week 2, you would remove dairy and continue to remove gluten. Week 3, you would remove all grains. And then so on and so forth until eventually you get to the AIP elimination stage. Maybe it's not even a week for you. Maybe you have to do it in a month for each. These things are highly individual, depending on your own personal personality and your own personal situation. But the overall goal is to eventually get to the AIP elimination, whichever way you do it. However, you may find that this is a better way of going about it so that you aren't overloading yourself with so much information and like different ways of cooking and everything all at once. And it gives you an opportunity to find recipes you like and learn the different styles and ways of making it easier on yourself. If you take nothing else from this video, please remember that every step you take towards healing is amazing. This is not a sprint. Healing is a long-term marathon. You want to feel good tomorrow, next week, next year, and 30 years from now. You're doing a great job, whether you're doing AIP perfectly or if you're doing AIP with a few runs to Starbucks and McDonald's. It doesn't matter. Now you may feel a bit better about sticking to the AIP diet, but you still may be a little bit overwhelmed with doing it. So check out this video where I give you some of my top tips on doing AIP and making it easier on yourself, especially if you're doing it by yourself.